morning everyone, it's Carol at Oak House Journals. Thank you so much for joining me today and I hope you're all happy and well. I know I certainly am, and why wouldn't I be? I'm in my craft room and I'm about to have some playtime. So as you can see, I've got my Junk Journal July in front of me. Sorry, let's get that right. I've got my Junk Journal July journal in front of me and I'm going to have a go at prompt number 28, which is upcycled. And I always thought that the word upcycled and recycled were interchangeable. I didn't think there was any difference between the two. But I decided I would just Google it this morning and check, and actually there is a difference. Who would have guessed? Well, I certainly wouldn't have guessed. Apparently, recycling involves the destruction of the item of waste in order to create something new and different, whereas upcycling takes the waste item and creates something new from it in its current state. And upcycling is apparently much more environmentally friendly because it uses fewer resources. So that was a bit of a surprise for me this morning because I just thought upcycling, recycling was exactly the same, and that was an intrinsic part of what we all did in our little journals, but apparently not. So I did have a little think about what I was going to do today, and I'm not going to be very humble here, but I have actually inspired myself. I spotted these in amongst my bits and bobs this morning, and these were some laminated tags that I made a while ago, and I thought, well, I could do something like this on my piece today. So very loosely, I will be doing something like these. I will certainly be making some dangles or some charms to go on my tag. I might make two or I might make one. And I'm going to make them out of these credit cards, or well, they're not credit cards. This was a clothing label that's plastic. This is a gift card, and as you can see, that's a Costa Coffee Club card, very old. So I'm going to be making some dangles out of these in a moment. My tag, I've got an old piece of packaging here. This was the packaging for a stenciling brush, and I just like the splatters on it, and I cut it into a tag shape ages ago, and it's just been sat in my craft room. So I'm going to make use of that. And I'm also going to make use of this. Now, this is obviously a piece of business mail that's come through the letterbox. For me, this is waste because I use the rest of the envelope every time we get one of these through the door. But I very rarely use these in my journals. When I do, then I'll grab one of these because these come through the door more or less every other day. So I don't keep them, I just grab them as and when I need them, but not very often. This came through the letterbox yesterday and I grabbed it because I thought, right, I will make use of that. So those are the pieces that I've got on my desk. That's where my inspiration has come from, and these are the bits that I'm going to use. So I'm just going to turn the camera on to hyperlapse, let you see what I create, and then pop back at the end for a little chat to say hi and bye, and to leave you with a few photographs to have a closer look at. So I'll see you in a little while. So here I've got my envelope, or my envelope window, which I folded in half, and I'm just taking out the acetate in the centre, folding it over again, as you can see, and I've put glue on one side of it, and I've got some vintage handwritten book text there, and I'm just covering one surface of it, and here you can see I'm going in, cutting out the aperture. So one piece is covered, and or one side is covered and the other isn't. So here I've got a piece of acetate which I folded in half, and I'm putting in a piece of vintage lace inside, and I'm going to trap that inside my envelope window, just fiddling with it because it was moving a little bit and I wanted it to be right up to the top of the fold. So a couple of paper clips holding it in place, and here I am just putting glue around the inside of my envelope window, There's my piece of acetate with the lace folded inside, and it's just glued at the moment. I do go in and stitch it later on, and here I am after it's stitched, gluing it on 3 sides, so down the left side, along the bottom and down the right hand side. Obviously it's plain on this side. The vintage handwritten book handwritten document or text was on the other side, and you can see I've done a little bit of an embellishment down in that bottom right hand corner. So here's my tag, and I'm just trimming it because I've had it to one side in my craft room here for ages, so I just wanted to straighten up those edges. I've got a little bit of straw paper there, and I've also got another little piece of the handwritten document for at the top, and I'm just layering those. I wanted the straw paper so that it would pick up the straw paper that's down the left hand side of the page, and here you can see I'm just covering over the writing on the back of that tag with some of the handwritten book keep on saying book text, don't I? Handwritten documents. A couple of areas where the glue hasn't quite grabbed, so I'm just going over that. And I'll show you in a moment. Oh, there's my little topper piece going in place, so just gluing the first piece down, then the handwritten text, and then on the back. So here I'm just showing that I've taken it to my sewing machine and I've stitched all the way around. This is a free printable from Saacibo here on YouTube. Dragana has done a fantastic tutorial on how to make these little dangles. So here I've just cut out some of the images from that printable onto the luggage, not luggage label, the clothing label, and I've just glued those on. The other technique that she shows is to use black acrylic paint. She also shows how to use alcohol ink and also white gesso. So the Costa card on the left hand side, I've given 1 coat of black acrylic paint, just dabbed it on as I'm doing here with the gesso. This is the White Company gift card, and as you can see, the first coat wasn't thick enough. I could see the writing through it still, so I'm going in here with some heavyweight white gesso. I've got a little sponge there, and I'm just dabbing it on the top. Now, Dragana actually shows on her YouTube channel, and I'll put the link in the description box down below to her YouTube channel. She actually shows a method where she uses white gesso, black acrylic paint, and also alcohol inks. So I've just gone for the black acrylic paint and white gesso. It's a lovely tutorial. She goes into a lot of detail, and I watched it last night and thought, oh, I need to have a go at that. I've got a couple of old plastic cards, gift cards, coffee cards, even old credit cards you can use. So I've got a couple of those. I'll give it a try. So yeah, it does take a little bit of time because obviously you need to let your coats of gesso and also your black acrylic paint, if you're using those, you need to coat a couple of times as necessary and then pop them to one side to dry between coats. The clothing label, I like the back of that. It had a sort of marble effect, so I just chopped out some of the printable pieces and glued them straight onto that clothing label. So here I am just offering up some of the images on the free printable to the back of my Costa card, and you can see that's the unpainted side. Black acrylic paint was on the other side, and all I'm doing is just trimming round the edge of the printable. I've printed this out on 160 gram GSM cardstock, and as Dragana recommends, don't go for anything less than that really. And I'm going to use glossy accents to glue this on. So here comes my glossy accents.
Haven't used this for a while, so it takes a little bit of time for it to flow, and as you can see I'm having to just unclog the nozzle there. So I'm putting a generous coat of this on the back, and then as I pop it onto the credit card I just give it a little bit of a wiggle so that you can ensure that the glue or the glossy accents is in good contact with the plastic of the credit card. So there's the little wiggle, and I just go in tapping it with my finger, wiping away any excess that seeps through, just gently using my bone folder to make sure I've got good contact there. And then I set that aside to dry for a good couple of hours. I really wanted it to be dried, be properly dry before I did anything with it. And I'm putting on a few more images here, as you can see, making full use of the whole space that I've got, and that's what it looks like on the back. So these are some of my little pieces, all cut out. Doesn't take long to actually cut them out. I found using a pair of scissors is best, and where the images on the free printable are rounded corners, I just snipped across the corner, because you need to go in and smooth down the edges and the corners. So I'm just sanding down the corners there. And here I'm going in with some treasure gold. You can use gilding wax, but I've got treasure gold in amongst my stash. Doesn't get used very often. So I'm just going around the edges to get rid of the white edges of the plastic where you've cut it. And I put a little bit on the back as well, as Dragana suggests. Here I'm just using the smallest hole on my crocodile to just punch through and make some little holes. And here I'm going in with glossy accents. I haven't got any varnish or anything like that, so I'm just going over the top when I can get my glossy accents to flow, just unclogging the nozzle there. So I put on a single coat of glossy accents on the top of each of my little charms or dangles, just being careful not to get any air bubbles, and left them to dry overnight, and it was as easy as that. And you don't find that the glossy accents goes into the hole that you've made at the top of your dangle, or wherever you've made the hole on your dangle. It just doesn't flow into that. If it does, it's easy enough to just poke out with a pair of tweezers. So just taking my time, keeping my nozzle in contact with the glossy accents as I coat it. And that's the tip I learnt to stop any bubbles forming. So that's one. Grabbing another one, just going around the hole, as you can see. And it's quite nice because I've taken the treasure gold onto the face of some of these, and it just acts to frame the image that's there. I also did a little bit of the treasure gold on the back, and it looks wonderful on top of the black acrylic paint, but it equally looks wonderful on top of the white gesso. You have to remember to be very gentle-handed. Don't go in heavy-handed with the gilding wax or the treasure gold. I did, and a couple of them look a bit glossy on the back, if you will. Not glossy, but there is a bit too much treasure gold on the back for my liking. You need a really, really light touch. But yeah, they look very nice, and I was very pleased with how these came out. The worst job is actually the sanding, where you've cut the plastic. But you do need to do that to smooth off those edges, otherwise they can be quite sharp. And also it gives you a nice rounded corner. So here they are, all nicely coated, and as I said, I will just set those aside overnight to dry.
So these are what the little charms look like now they're finished off, and as you saw, I went round the outside edges with treasure gold and I also put some on the back in different amounts. So as you can see, I've used quite a lot there, went in heavy-handed, used less on this one and then hardly any on that one. And with those that were covered with white gesso, I think this one is one of those, I just used the residue from my black acrylic paintbrush and just scraped over the top to take the colour off the white gesso, and then went in with the Treasure Gold. But equally, if you didn't want to use the alcohol inks or the black acrylic paint or gesso, then equally you could just use the printables and put one on the back as well as on the front, and you could coat these on the back as well if you wanted to, and I might consider going down that route next time as well. So there we are. I just thought I would show you those quickly, and this is my finished page, and as you can see, I've used one of the little owl charms up there. I went for that colour because I thought it tied in better with this. You saw me doing some stenciling on the background. I've left this distress look, which if I hold it up maybe you can see a little bit better. This was old paper, and as you can see it had stuff stuck to it, and I've just left that there just for a bit of detail. Stencil paste on my tag, didn't do anything other than put a little bit of this lace up here and a couple of the little snippets left over. This was some very rough silk ribbon that I had in my stash. The colour was just right, and as you saw I just covered the back, a little bit of vintage temple paper and some of the handwritten document up here. And basically that's it really. I like this idea for a pocket. It's really easy to do. You don't have to struggle trying to cover this and cut out the aperture. It's quite easy if you just fold it in half, use it as it is, cover one side, and just sandwich some lace in between. And as you can see, I've put a line of stitching all the way around the outside and also around the inside. My lace is quite secure in there between the two folds of acetate. That's not going to move, and it's not going to impede my tag going into the pocket. I also used one of Dragana's butterfly free printables and created a little cluster, if you will, down at the bottom there, and then I've just used a little tiny snippet of paper there with the word Daydream on it, but there'll be some close-up photos at the end of the video for you to have a look at, everybody. So that's my prompt for Upcycled. I'll now be moving on to this side of the page, and the prompt for this side was playlist. So yes, I'll have to get my thinking cap on as to what I can do with that one. Until the next video, everybody, thank you so much for watching. Take care, have a lovely day, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye now.